Hello, everyone. Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending of your location. Welcome to this, next episode of the audio product management series. Um, I'm glad we are here, and this is going to be really like a kick-ass episode because
No
today
pressure.
no pressure. Yeah, because we have a special guest, very special guest, Simon Cross, Chief Product Officer from Native Instruments. Hey, Simon.
Hey, Wojtek, great to meet you, and thanks for inviting me on.
No, thanks for coming. The show. That's really, like a big pleasure. Especially that, as you know, I'm a native instruments user myself, and using tools my day, sort of like a music making and a product guy myself. So having you on the show is like a double pleasure, right? No pressure, of course, right?
No pressure. Yeah, right.
So before we start, let me just say a few things. First of all, number one, that we have strategic partner for this episode, the company called Continental from Denmark, from Copenhagen, who are the makers of the super cool mostly open source multi-tool called Dabi. And they're actually currently on Kickstarter, so you can help this startup. There's a really nice startup that we met in Berlin in Super Bowl. And I think we have a CTO from this company here on this webinar here. So hi. And the second thing I want to also maybe touch on few logistic things. So first of all, I want to ask if you can hear us and see us. Maybe if you can confirm by saying what country and what town you are from. So we actually see also what kind of geography we have here on this. What kind of time zone you're looking and watching us from. That would be cool. Of course, there is certain delay, so we'll just read this in a second. Yeah, so that's number one. And this number two is that there will be obviously a dedicated part, to question and answers, so you can type, Australia. It must be actually early in the morning right there, right now. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you being with us. And Leo from Continental. That's cool. UK, right on. All right, that's you can already see, so many countries. France, bonsoir. Comment ça va? Okay, so the number two is obviously, well, you can, if you have any questions in the, while we talk, feel free to put all, them all in the comments section. We are not going to respond to them during the show, but we'll actually leave some, maybe quarter or something, depending how it goes. I think we need to actually expand them from, usually they're an hour, but I can say to just to cover all the subjects that we want to cover. Probably we'll need to have 3 hours, but maybe next time, we can. Maybe Simon can do a part two if it goes nice and people are happy.
Well, yeah, again, no pressure, right?
No pressure. No. I know that you being a CPO of such a company, it's probably a lot of work. So that's also the reason why I want to thank you for being with us. Yeah, so that's the program. So first of all, we'll have a discussion for let's say 40 minutes, maybe a bit less more, and then we'll actually take the questions, and hopefully there will be some. Yeah. So yes, with this said, let's start. Simon, maybe you can just tell a little bit, about yourself and how you got where you are right now. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it a swing. So yeah, I'm Simon, the CPO at Native. Been at Native for kind of a year and a half, coming up to 2 years. It's been an amazing experience. I've learned a huge amount. Before Native, I spent 12 years at Meta. So I joined Meta when it was less than 1,000 employees. It was called Facebook back then, obviously. Less than 1,000 employees. The movie came out, the social network movie came out in my 4th week at the company. And by the time I left in 2022, it was kind of 80,000 people. So it was a much bigger organization than when I started. Just an amazing experience. I learned so much there from the people I worked with and the things I was involved in. It was a huge amount of fun. Before that, I worked at the BBC in London, working on a bunch of kind of audio and video on demand and personalization products. And before that, I worked in commercial radio. But look, going all the way back, I've been into music and technology my entire life, as long as I can remember. My dad jokes that my first toy growing up was an extension lead, and he wasn't joking. That's actually kind of true. I started DJing when I was like 8. My dad was the head teacher of a school, and I got to do the mobile discos at the school, and that became a whole thing. I've been drumming I've been playing the piano since a very early age. So like when I was growing up, me and my friends would kind of, I learned how to solder and got a FM radio transmitter kit off the internet, off a magazine actually at the time. Don't tell the authorities this, kind of made it. And then me and my friends would record a radio show onto a tape, and then we'd play it, and I'd cycle around my village listening to that. So I'm a proper nerd, right? I mean, I've been programming music electronically on the Amiga. Octamed was kind of my first sequencer. I've been in bands and I've played jazz drums, all over the world. And I'm just like super into music. I'm super into technology, and like my entire career has been the intersection of those two things essentially. And when I left Meta, I was trying to figure out, what's next for me? What do I want to work on? And, I made a little list. And, one of the ways I figured out what was at the top of that list was kind of looking at my YouTube recommendations, my YouTube watch history. And I'm just like so into this space, right? I'm a customer, I'm a user, I'm an enthusiast, I'm a nerd, I'm a hacker. And I get to work with people like that. And it's amazing. Our customers, they're passionate people, they're creative people, they're technical people. The people at Native are creative, passionate, and technical. And, the industry we work in is full of people like that. And, I just feel like I found my people. It's great. It's great. So I know that's a kind of rambling history of my journey. But yeah, I'm an electronic engineer. I used to be an actual engineer. I'm a musician and a coder and a product person, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, nice. Listen, so let's get then to like a hard questions, right? Because the subject of the webinar is the future of music. So we actually going to probably to discuss some pretty challenging questions. And if I can start by asking maybe some kind of controversial or maybe let's say like opening question, is actually music in danger with what's going on in the technology space, or is actually something which is like a like a big new chance and new big like opportunities for musicians and for artists?
I think music is changing, and music's always been changing, right? Like, it's just kind of a cheesy answer, but you could have asked the same question about the invention of the wax cylinder, the invention of like the vinyl record, the invention of sampling, the invention of streaming, and the move to digital, and the rise of YouTube and Spotify and all of these kinds of things. Like the music is something that we as a species have been doing since the dawn of time, and it's been changing since the dawn of time. And, one of the things that you can always look back on is like, yes, those big periods of transition were always a challenging time. I'm not trying to minimize that, but like the last 10 years, of music were different to 10 years, 100 years ago. And it's still a great place to be creative, and a great place to spend one's time and energy. So it's definitely changing. It's been changing a lot, forever. And the question is like, how is it changing? What are we all doing to ensure that change is heading in a positive direction, a net positive direction, for the listener and for the creator, and navigating those challenges as we go. So it's a cheesy answer, but I guess just look back in history at all of the things that have changed and how music has evolved, and how the business of music and the creation of music has evolved. And I'm an optimistic person in general, so I think that's kind of
gotcha. Yeah, you're so much right. I know like so much people actually blast, for example, Spotify, but I mean, can you imagine that like any person from any place in the world could like play their music like, I don't know, in New York, LA, whatever they want. Actually, you had to actually had a like a great record deal, and actually know right people actually get to actually good people on this like a label actually, because like 90% of actually probably of bands actually
Totally.
just
It's like,
they were just
20 years ago, it was all about, did an A&R person come to see you in the club? And it was all about the network. In many ways today, you get discovered because you've already found an audience on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever. And what the music industry is doing is kind of accelerating music that's already found an audience. And the barriers to entry to making music as a profession have just been changing and reducing over time. Again, the model of the record label is like venture capital in technology, right? They identify somebody they want to invest in, and they give them money to do things they wouldn't otherwise be able to do, like grow a startup or hire people in the service that they become big. And 30 years ago, if you wanted to record and release an album, you needed to hire a studio. That was very expensive. You needed to hire a bunch of musicians. You needed to pay to get your music pressed onto physical media. Today, you need a laptop and some software and an internet connection, and you have the chance to reach an audience with your ideas. And that is a challenging thing. It's also, I believe, hugely net positive. It's going to allow genres to flourish and spread that wouldn't have otherwise done so. It's going to allow people that would have never found an audience to find an audience. And in many ways, it's it's meritocratic in that sense. That, again, it also comes with challenges. The economic model isn't great, and that brings its own challenges. But on the whole, again, I think there's a lot of positivity about the technology change that technology is bringing to our industry. I mean, my kids, they're just in the house over there. They can walk into the room and incant any song pretty much ever recorded, and it just starts playing. And they've discovered music like that. That's just they never would have found otherwise.
You're right. I mean, Simon, I ask for the reason because sometimes, I mean, probably everyone has doubts. I mean, on the last episode, I talked to Francois Corel, who was a VP of audio in Avid, and he says, of course, as a professionally trained musician, he says, I had hard, path actually to become a musician. Now everybody have, a very simple, it's just way easier. But question is, actually, doesn't actually making everything super easy is, always good. You know what I'm trying to say? Actually, certain effort is actually to make something great. It's actually effort is required. This is what I was taught at school, right? I mean, it even hurts a little because you actually go through certain challenges. I'm not saying you have to go to the conservatory and 20 years of a learning instrument to become some kind of a second Mozart. But I mean, is it not that the technology a little bit gives us some this a even this a Neil Postman wrote in the book this it was actually he says a triumph of technology over culture, and he says he was actually saying this Greek myth about the king who he was given this this wish he can actually turn everything into gold, and the problem was that he was touching everything was gold. He actually become hungry, right? Because he simply he didn't understand the side effects of actually of his wishes make everything be so super rich that he can see, I'm just trying to say that he gave this analogy actually to say that we have to be careful a little bit because in world life cannot be completely simple. And what do you think about that? What is your
That's great. So again, I think that the journey to make things easier in many ways has been a very long one, right? And it's been going on for a long time. Tools like Quantize help you play in time or sound like you're playing in time when you might not be able to play as well in time. Arpeggiators help people that don't necessarily know music theory to sound like they do in some cases. So all of these tools are about helping people achieve a creative outcome, but they don't achieve a creative outcome for you on their own. They're just tools, right? Yep. I remember my dad came home one day and he bought for me my first 4-track tape recorder, like a Fostex 4-track tape recorder. I mean, like, I lost it. I was like, this is amazing. And it gave me a tool that I could use to be creative, that was a tool that I didn't have access to before. I didn't have access to multi-track recording when I was 12. Like, the recording studios are for that. But I had the tool now, but just because I had this tool that allowed me to multi-track record doesn't mean I was suddenly on top of the pops, you know? Like,
you're much right, Ian. Yeah. I remember my sort of like first, I'm not sure you remember the Fast Tracker. You know, there was like an app. I don't remember who made it. It was like my first sort of like a DAW kind of experience was Fast Tracker. You know, you could also
I mean, I think again, I'm an optimist, and I think giving more people the ability to attempt to satisfy a creative urge is a good thing for humanity, right? It doesn't. I think that's a good thing. I think more people should paint, more people should write, more people should create music. I think it's good for the soul. I think it's good for the species. It brings people together, and like, in many ways, like, I think, again, as a product manager, you think of a funnel, right? Often as an analogy. And what a lot of these kind of enabling technologies do, or even just reducing cost or creative or technical barriers to entry, they enable people to realize they have a creative talent that they didn't realize they could explore, such that they go on to be a conservatoire member, right? Like, I don't think Berkeley in Boston is having any admissions challenges, right? Like, if anything, there are more people who realize that this is a satisfying activity, a rewarding activity, and decide to turn it into a career. So
that's very much true.
I think these things help more people ultimately become creative, and I think that's no bad thing.
True, very much so. But listen, I mean, once again, sorry for such, like sort of like a devil's advocate questions, but I mean, I hear sometimes from musicians that they say, hey, there's so much gear, I mean, sometimes actually it's even harder, right? Because we are just simply flooded with some, from the stuff, and we actually discussed before that actually market is pretty saturated, so what can we do with that? What do you think about that? So what could be like a response to? I mean, now I know what it is. We discussed this before the webinar, right?
Yeah. So a few things here. One is, I think you could have made that statement 10 years ago, and it would have sounded as true then as it sounds today. And yet we have a bunch of tools today that we didn't have 10 years ago. So like, I am continually amazed by our ability as a community to create new tools, new sounds, and new ways to use those tools that are fulfilling and creative and fun. So like, I don't think we're done. I just disagree that all of the ideas have been done yet. And that's why I came to work today. That's why my teams came to work today. And that's why tens of thousands of people who work in our industry who are hackers or creators did so. Second,
listen, by any mean I say this actually the end. I was just saying, what to do if there is so much to choose from, right? And there was times people couldn't afford, you like in the medieval times, probably you should have, I don't know, be like born into being able to play an instrument. Nowadays you can choose from whatever you want, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we're spending a lot of time on at Native is investing more of our time and energy in technology that helps people get the most out of what they already have. Okay. Right? Like, it's one thing to have a synthesizer at your disposal, but are you really exploring it, exploring what it can do, finding the limits of its sonic space? Maybe not. And sometimes that's because you've got other things to do. Sometimes it's because that exploration, like understanding what you can get out of what you already have is hard. Like, if you have a library of 100,000 samples and you've got 2,000 kick drums, happy Saturday morning, whereas like, I think there's a lot of investment, certainly at Native and other companies too, going into helping you navigate that breadth and that choice. If you buy complete collector's edition, you've got gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of
Tell me
content.
more about it. Yes, I
And
know from experience.
If you're presented with 150 products, where do you start? And I think that's what we're spending a lot of time on at the moment at Native, and you'll see some of that technology launch later in next year. Similarly, that was actually the thesis behind adding the tools feature into Contact 8, was to enable people to take a piano or a synthesizer or an instrument, that's expecting them to hit the keyboard in a musical way, and that's can be quite a daunting thing to do, right? It's creative juices, writer's block, all those kinds of things. And tools is about helping you get started with a creative idea and then maybe switch it out if you want to change it for a different one, right? The chords tool gives you 7 chords, and you can change them in many ways. You can roll a dice, and if you like 6 of them, but there's one you want to change, you can record your own there. Like, again, it's about, I think, helping people achieve their creative outcomes faster. And we as an industry have done an amazing job of giving people many, many, many tools. Now we need to spend more time helping people navigate, use, and get the most out of those products. And yeah, as I say, that's what we're spending a lot of our time on at Native.
Simon, I thank you for saying that. Every time we have these webinars, I learn something very interesting. And to me, what you said actually is, like a kind of enlightening, because, I have also this kind of critical mind and sometimes, doubts, but actually I never thought about it like this, that actually those tools can be like a spark for somebody to, to actually go deeper. And this actually, I did it like 20 or 30 years ago, and now I actually criticize people doing exactly the same thing, but actually with maybe a little bit more sophisticated tools, right? Like complete Contact 8 or whatever, right? I mean, but it's exactly the same pattern, only 30 years ago, and just so it's like, but let me just summarize. So what you mentioned is actually, you said that one of those creative challenges is actually to realize that you have a musical potential, right? So that's what I heard from what you're saying, right? And actually help people actually sort of streamline this, sort of funnel this creativity into creating something, because it's obviously good. Are there any other?
Yeah? Sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just asking, because, or maybe let's stop, because I hear you want to say something more, so I can ask the question later. I don't want to sort of go to the next sort of subject before we just.
Yeah, I think that's just to double down on it. Like, I think, like, being artistic, being creative is a terrifying and daunting activity, right? It's like I enjoy playing music and DJing, but you put me in front of a canvas and ask me to draw, I'm gonna freeze. It's terrifying. And a lot of creativity is about self-confidence and self-expression, right? Like, particularly if you're playing in a band or a group, like, it's a team sport. You don't want to let your team down, and like, getting to a place where you have enough self-confidence in your own abilities that you want to spend more time doing it, or you want to do it with others, is itself a process. And I think, like, what technology can do is help people through that journey, right? Like, because they help, again, just to use the example of tools in Contact 8, without that, it's like staring at a blank canvas. Like, and again, for many people, the blank canvas is the fun. Like, that is
yes,
the satisfaction. Is like, give me a blank canvas and I'm going to run it. For other people, particularly people earlier in their musical journey, like, they need often, I feel this myself because I needed it. Like, I needed tools that helped me realize I could do things that I didn't realize I could do. I felt good about those outcomes, and it snowballed into, becoming a musical career, if you like. And I think that's the business in which we're engaged. Everything we do at Native, nothing does anything for you. Like, it might help you, it might, like, assist you, it might give you a starting point, but, like, our job is not to give you the outcome. It's not to take away the creativity.
Can you give some examples? Can you give some examples of, to
yeah,
listeners?
so I mean, looking at Isotope, for example, and like a product like Ozone, what's the job to be done that you hire Ozone for, to use a product management phrase, was to make my track sound awesome and to make it sound loud or radio ready or, sound great on my friend's car stereo. And that's what mastering is, right? It's taking a mixed track and making it sound even better. And there are lots of services where you can put in a WAV file, wait 10 minutes, and they'll spit you out a WAV file. And yes, it'll sound better. Great. That's awesome. That's not what Ozone does. Ozone listens to your track and it builds a mastering chain for you. And it shows you that mastering chain. And you can see it, right? You can see that it put, a couple of compressors, and a couple of EQs. And what, 2 EQs? What's going on there? And you can see that it's put in a multi-band compressor and it's picked, thresholds and crossover points and ratios and attacks and decays. And you can go into that and see what it did for you. This is really powerful for a few reasons. One, if you don't know how to build a mastering chain, it helps you understand what a mastering chain looks like or could look like, and why it is the way it is. Two, you have full control over that mastering chain. You can tweak the frequencies, you can tweak the attacks and decays, so you can make it your own. Ozone's assistant just gives you a starting point. Now, many people just accept the starting point. They're like, yeah, great, that's done. A lot of people
throw it away. Actually, what I did was throwing away and starting from the beginning. You see.
Also fine. Like
no, Simon. But let me just interrupt you and say something. Funny. It's you say that because I use Ozone for years. I never thought about it this way. And actually, when we actually had this conversation before the webinar, I just realized how powerful assistant this could be. And actually, nowadays maybe I'm a bit more. I'm not actually like by any mean and sound like in mixing mastering engineer, but actually it's great for people actually who are listening and actually making music, because it's using the analogy of ChatGPT, right? That you don't have to have AI actually making something instead for you. It actually can be like a sparring partner when you can actually learn from it actually and see, this is like I never thought about this that way. That's brilliant. That's very nice.
And that's a principle we uphold in all the products we're building. A lot of them give you a starting point, but they never take away your ability to control the outcome, right? You are in full creative control, and that is why that's what people want, right? They want to have the full creative control, but there is a lot of parts of the creative process which are drudgery, right? They aren't the fun bits. And on automation and recommendation and assistive technologies can help you with the drudge bits, so you can spend more time on the fun bits. And that's what it's all about. And different people get different fun out of different things, right? There's a whole class of synth nerds who taking an empty Euro rack and a wall of modules and plugging it together from first principles is the fun, right? That is the fun. But for other people, that isn't the fun. The fun is weaving a synth sound into a mix or something like that. So again,
I hear you. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Listen, because we can. I don't want to sort of stay on one subject. I wanted to ask you one more question related to these challenges, because this is clear, right? So like a spark, creative spark. Letting people realizing that you have a potential. What other challenges technology can solve? Especially like a music technology. So what other challenges you think musicians and generally like artistic people could have, and how technology could help them out? Of course, there is actually like a distribution thing, entire thing, business. That's sure, right? And monetization. You mentioned before, right? This kind of business models that are hard and challenging. But is there anything else that comes to your mind?
Many things, right? Like depends which part of the kind of the system you're talking about. Like we've talked mostly here about the kind of music creation or audio processing domain. But thinking about the broader job of being a creator, like one of the biggest advantages that modern technology that I know well from my time at Meta is like reaching an audience, finding collaborators, finding people that are into your music, and the reverse, finding music you're into so that you can be influenced by it, right? Like I used to be influenced by whatever was in the top 40, and now I'm influenced by Spotify Discover Weekly, so I think like there's a whole bunch of technologies that can help with other parts of the funnel.
But so let's stay. Sorry, I wasn't precise. I still meant, obviously, I said, let's leave this sort of, distribution and promotion, etc. aside. Just like this, sort of like to use the, like a product term, like a build phase. What is the, when we actually create a track and it's.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all the same theme of assisting you with achieving your creative outcome, but not taking the power away from you. And that theme can actually apply to many things, right? So like one of the things we're working on at the moment is technology to help you navigate sounds that you could get out of a synthesizer, right? So the classic case here is you have a massive list of presets for your synth, and you just scroll through all of them until you've got one you want, right? And you might have 150, 1,000 presets. But technology could help you, for example, take a sound and find presets that sound like that. Take a sound from a song and find a sample that sounds like that, or several samples that sound like that. And again, it's like a lot of creativity can be in kind of one of two modes. You either have no idea what you want and you're waiting for the tool or the sound or the idea to inspire you, or you know exactly what you want and you need to get to it as quickly as possible. Like, you have the sound of the hi-hat in your head and you just need to get to it. And again, with Ozone, as an example, we have a product called Audio Lens. An Audio Lens will listen to any sound from your computer. Will listen to a Spotify track, a YouTube track, or any WAV or MP3 on your computer. It will build what we call a target based on that sound, and then you can load that target onto your own tracks in Ozone. Because when we did the user research, one of the things that people told us was like, I want my track to sound like this. They have and we use the word target in the code and in the product briefs because that's what the customers we spoke to called it. Like, I have a target in mind and I want to get to that target.
I hear you loud and clear. I know. Yeah, it's like it's bugging. I can, listening for I mean, you have this sound in mind and you cannot get it, and you have like thousands of. That's sometimes so annoying. Yeah, I get it.
Well, the other thing that technology can help you do is sound unique. And last year we were working on this prototype, which is actually available as a private alpha called Companion. We call it Companion, which is like a generative AI synthesizer, basically. And you can describe.
I think I saw it on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And again, that thing outputs crazy sounds that no one's ever heard before, right? And like, compare that with us all having access to the same set of sample libraries, right? We've all got access to Splice. We've all got access to the stock plugins and sounds in the DAW. We've all got access to a complete standard, I hope. And, yes, there's a huge amount of breadth there, but if everybody has the same starting point, then the end point might be close together. And what technology can do is help you sound like no one else because it gives you unique starting points that no one else has. And that, I think, is another really interesting creative idea. Like, again, 2 years ago, Playbox was a pretty novel idea, quite a different product from Native. Nadine, who was on the design team for that, obviously still works for us and works on a lot of our instruments. And the thesis behind that was, again, help me come up with a creative idea through randomness. Like, the dice is the most used feature of that. And which is why we have a dice in tools that we just launched in Contact, and we have a dice in quite a few other products now because, again, if you imagine hiring a studio and hiring a string section, cool, expensive, you're going to get like kind of one sound out, not quite one sound, but you know what you're going to get. One of the things that technology can do, because you can have gigabytes of breadth on your computer, or you've access to tools that generate you completely novel stuff, is help you sound different. And I think we're still at the early days of really helping people with that.
That's great, but I would actually say that we need actually something else for that, which is actually, I know I don't want to actually even get to this. I just want to sort of make a comment, because if we just open this box, we'll just speak here, talk here like for 3 additional hours.
You could talk for hours.
I mean, like a not just distribution, like a physical distribution or like a digital distribution, but generally promotion, etc. I mean, probably everybody listens to Rick Beato, and he was just telling the story about, like the sort of golden age of rock and roll, and actually how the industry was actually structured. So, especially radio, like independent radio stations, so there was actually like some kind of, variety of, every DJ, every, let's say, a radio station was trying to, look for talents, so that's like so much different music you can hear. And he actually said that there was some kind of corporate, like a move that they sort of put all the radio, you are a radio guy, so probably know better than anybody else, that they just centralized it everywhere. And they were actually like some kind of centralized, like a playlist, what can you can play. So you're saying that, we can have like a completely different style of music, but on condition that actually those who actually are in the charge of distributing this music will actually allow this, because if they say, hey, this is exactly what is allowed and this is what, people will consume because of the algorithm, then we are screwed anyway. We can produce, nobody will listen. Yeah.
Well, the flip around, and this is you have got me onto a hot topic here, because I spent 10 years in the radio industry and 10 years in not deliberately. This is actually something that came to me actually right now. Yeah, no, well, so look, the interesting thing about radio, commercial radio, is the business model, right? And the business model is ads, and ads for local carpet shops or whatever it is, right? Mobile phone tariffs, and the way you get the biggest reach for your ads is to play the most generic music, right? You play music that everybody, like most people, will listen to, and there's only so many frequencies on the, again, talking about AM FM world here, there's only so many frequencies available, and so you end up with radio stations that are playing very generic music and not really the business model forces that industry to trend towards a certain thing.
I agree.
The flip around is that with the internet, it's exactly the opposite, right?
That's what
the business model is. Look, we are having a conversation here with hundreds of people watching us that we would not have existed in a world of analog broadcast television, not even satellite or cable television 10 years ago. So, Spotify is able to, and Apple Music and the others, they're able to curate music for me that is just for me. Like the breadth of listening that I'm able to access has gone up, not down, right? Because I have access to all of this stuff, and the system is able to recommend me stuff it thinks I will like, not stuff it thinks everyone will like, and that is the resulting incentive.
The centralized model again, but actually on the internet, where actually every, let's say, creator, every creative person can actually create like his own community, and actually community based, not only just fandom based, but I would say like a community based, right? You're very much right. I can even actually, I know it's actually maybe delicate subject, but I don't want to go into politics at all. I'm just trying to say that even if you look like elections around the world, actually we can see it like rising, so like importance of podcasts, etc. So really like people who have actually big outreach, they can become like like thought leaders, right? That they can that's great, because it's actually like over, it's really like, again, not driven by just big tech. It's just also driven by communities, people who actually want to listen. I want to to listen to this podcast or that podcast. You want to listen to Wojciech and Simon, or just talking bullshit, so I can go someplace else and actually listen to something completely different. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Brilliant. So we have a new model. Thank you very much, Simon. We have a new model that we have to go through. Listen, I have to just, I want to actually touch the subject of, being a CPO of the company like Native Instruments, which to me is actually one of the, it's so everybody knows, Native is not paying me. I'm just saying from my heart. I mean, I use, the NI products for a long time. So one of the hottest companies out there. So it's just very interesting for me. What is like, what's your typical day, and as much as you can say, there's obviously like a podcast, podcast webinar dedicated to the product people. So if somebody thinks of actually growing their career to be a CPO, now you can tell them do that or do not.
Don't. It's a terrible idea. No, I mean, first of all, it's a humbling position to be in. It's like it's a huge honor. Like, I pinch myself every day I come into work, like that I get to do this job. Like, it really is stunning. I'm very rarely the smartest person in the room. If I am, I'm in the wrong room. But I get to work with a bunch of talented, smart, opinionated, passionate people, and that gets me excited every day. What does the day look like? I mean, it is full on, is what it is. After this call, I've got a meeting so it's just coming up to 7:40 p.m. here in London. I've got a meeting for 2 hours from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. And we started the calls this morning at 9. So it's a full on job, and it's a combination of like long-term strategy and short-term firefighting. Like, my job, there's many parts to my job, but like, my job is to kind of understand or to form an opinion about where the industry is going, where society is going, where the customer's expectations are going, and frame that opinion in strategy that gets the teams, the people at the company excited and aligned and executing in a direction that, hopefully will result in a great outcome for the customer, which is always the first thing. And so that's kind of the main job. Like, I do very little execution. If I'm doing execution, something's gone terribly wrong. My job is to create the environment in which others can be successful and creative and innovative. So that's the main job. And then a lot of what I do.
Can I interject and ask you one question about the strategy? Because this is so like I used to be in a product executive, it's just much smaller company. But one thing that always, until today, if somebody asks me about product strategy, I honestly say in the conversation, I have no bloody idea what it is. Sort of, I know what you mean. I feel the same, but I wanted to pick your brain. Is it, how do you do that? Is this just more like a sort of a creative process that you sort of like a lead, like a captain on a ship that you simply steer and it's like dynamic, or this is like some kind of documented stuff? Is this like a formal process of strategy? How do you do that?
Great question. All of the above. So the first thing says strategy is fractal, right? It's not like there's one strategy and that's it. Like, there is a company strategy, there's a product strategy, and then different product lines have different strategies, and then different products have strategies, and then different features have different strategies. So like, a strategy is a plan for what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. And I think the way I like to work through what is a strategy is, there's a book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rummeld, which is a great read. And he kind of has 3 steps in a strategy. It's really very simple. The first is diagnosis, which is a candid, raw, naked, frank description of the situation in which you find yourself. Right. And that can be written down, it could be spoken, it could be slides, whatever it is. But it's like, what is the world in which you find yourself? Not the world as you would like it to be, but like, where are you? It's like you wake up on the pitch of a football game 10 minutes before the final whistle. Like, where are you while you're 1 goal down with 10 minutes to go? Okay, great. What are you going to do about it? Okay. So understanding where you are is a critical part of strategy. Then his second part is this this idea of guiding policies. So the problem with being prescriptive is that all plans are wrong, right? The old phrase is, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So if you just go from diagnosis to, okay, given that we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, you fail or could fail. So in the middle is the guiding policy, which is, given your diagnosis, what are the big strategic thematic things you are going to do, and the big strategic thematic things you're kind of not going to do? Not super prescriptive, but at a relatively high level. And then your coherent actions is kind of, okay, given that, what are we actually going to do? So your diagnosis probably doesn't change very much unless the world changes. Your guiding policies might change as you learn new things. Your coherent actions will change as you progress, as you learn which of those things are working and which of them are not. And when I think about kind of the NI group, that I support, having a coherent product strategy is really tough.
Yeah,
because
actually some companies, it's not just it's just like a group of companies.
Well, RX and Tractor are like two of the most different products you can imagine. One is used on every Netflix show, and the other is used by hundreds of thousands of DJs around the world. Like, they're very different things. And so, again, the way I approach it is not to try and be prescriptive. It's to try and figure out what the common themes are across everything we do, document those, help people understand them and why we think they matter, help them actualize them. But the way those themes manifest in different products will differ greatly. Like, so our strategy has a theme called assistance and intelligence, right? And that's in the product strategy because we have conviction and evidence that people are choosing products that will help them achieve their creative outcomes quicker. But what that theme actually means in Tractor and RX is going to be completely different. In RX, it might be, we've discovered 50 hertz mains hum. Would you like to remove it? Yes, done. In Tractor, it could be, man, you've got 200 amazing songs here. You're DJing this one. These are 5 songs that you could play next. Or these are 10 tracks that have just been...
That's why you have then great product leaders, for different product lines, so you can actually find solutions. Listen, Simon, I know you, because you mentioned that you have a hard stop, right? And you still have a meeting just after the webinar, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Can obviously we can just, I just opened the, Pandora box, but I want to actually take a couple of questions before you go. I was hoping that we can maybe prolong a little bit. I can sneak, a couple of minutes, but if you can't, let's, simply not completely, ignore others, okay? And see what they actually asking, guys, so right now, if you don't mind, I'm sorry for jumping so quickly, but guys, have any questions to Simon? Yeah, it's just that was quick turn. Quick turn. Yeah, but I just heard, I just spotted you mentioned like a 2-hour call later, right? So
no, I did, yeah, and I'm just trying to see if I can, you can see me looking at Slack to see if I can delay myself a little bit, because this is fun. But let's keep going anyway, and I'll figure out if I can stay a few extra minutes.
Guys, so one question. If you have questions. By the way, one thing while I'll wait, good questions. We have a community on Facebook which is called Audio and Music Tech Product People. You can see comment, in the link in the comments. By the way, Simon is also there, so it's like a closed group for audio nerds. Not just product people. It can be UX, like engineers, founders, you name it. Oh, we have a question. Yeah.
And my one of our CFO from Native is actually watching the call and just messaged me on Slack to say we can cover for you for a bit. So I think I'm good to go a little longer.
Good, great. All right, a question. What about software stability and compatibility when OS are changing so quickly? So is hardware. Oh yeah.
It is really tough. And we spend the native companies, we have a huge product portfolio, and keeping that portfolio up to date across all of the operating systems we support is a really expensive endeavor. right? We have multiple engineers dedicated to just doing that and nothing else, not building new products, not innovating, just trying to ensure that our existing products remain compatible with latest operating systems. And one of the challenging things is, one of the ways to make sure that you've got the time and energy to do that is to drop support for older operating systems. And that can create its own challenges. Just with Machina 3, we released recently, we had to drop support for the Machina Mark 1 hardware that was released, more than 10 years ago. A bunch of people upset about that. But it allowed us to remove a large amount of code from the Machina product, which meant we had less to maintain and more time and energy to spend on new features. So there's a real trade-off there. And the desktop software environment is a very hostile place to build reliable software. And yet that is what we do. It's what our customers expect from us. And it's just part of the job. What we are doing at Native is trying to be more proactive and prepared for these when new operating systems comes out. I mean, Windows is relatively fine, but Mac can be a real challenge. Mac releases a new OS every year. Those are not uniformly affecting our products, right? Like some releases are a huge amount of work to comply with. Others are just nothing and no work, but we have to do a bunch of QA and validation and testing, which is itself a lot of work. So we have a central team. We call them Pit Crew. And they're awesome. They really are awesome. Their job is to kind of keep on top of maintenance across the whole portfolio and either do the compatibility work themselves or make sure the team who should do the compatibility work knows they need to do some compatibility work. And so that having a central team whose job it is to be accountable for the central point of excellence or the central kind of authority on new operating system versions and compatibility work is a much, much more efficient way than having every engineer on every team have to think about it. And since we instituted that model, it's actually helped us be more responsive to software updates. We're not as quick as we need to be. I know that. Our customers tell us that all the time, but we are quicker than we used to be.
All right. Listen, so let me just jump. I can see on the list, good that your team covers for you because we have a couple of interesting questions as well. Okay, outside of NI, what companies do you see as real disruptors in the music tech industry?
Oh, I see disruption everywhere. Like, the first thing is I have a real natural respect for our competitors. Like, just start there, right? Like, this is an industry full of creative people trying innovative solutions. I mean, who do I think is particularly disruptive and innovative? Well, I mean, the obvious ones are like the full song generative AI companies, Boomi, Suno, and those folks. Like, and actually potentially the big players like Google and Meta themselves, right? They have the resources and the time and the technology and the talent to do things which are really game changing that smaller companies, even like Native, we're a much smaller company than Google, could never do. And I think, therefore, we spend a bunch of time looking at what they're doing and thinking about what it might mean for the industry and what it might mean for us. I think other companies are disrupting, through the business models they use, not just through the technology. I mean, there's a whole bunch of companies I look at and think that they're doing a really great job.
Yes, hard to pick one and actually just to disregard all others, right? That's I understand what you're.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Lambda do a great job. I think Output are doing a great job. I think a lot of companies in our space are doing a great job. I think Apple are doing a great job. The value they're adding into Logic Pro, the fact that they're making that available on iPad is phenomenal. I think Avid are doing really interesting stuff. I think FL Cloud, FL Studio, and Image Line are doing really interesting stuff. Like FL Cloud is a really great product for to have lots of things you need all in one place. Like literally, you can look everywhere at nearly everyone in our industry, and they're doing something different and cool and interesting. And that is wonderful. It's wonderful for the customer. It keeps us and our teams on our toes. Innovation is what pushes the ball forward. And it's a fun, exciting, and competitive game. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of companies, but I think the folks particularly kind of playing at the edges of what AI can do and how that intersects with music is potentially the most disruptive thing, period.
Yeah. Now you have a tough one. Brutal, thoughts on subscription model. Brutally honest, please.
Yeah, look, I mean, like, the answer is subscriptions are great for some people and they're not great for others. And I think like that's fundamentally the case. There's a lot of people who think, subscriptions are evil and bad. Those people tend to be people that can afford hundreds or thousands of dollars for perpetual software licenses. And not everybody is like that. Like there are people who want access to a wide variety of tools, but they value the kind of flexibility that comes with a subscription. You can, pause it and resubscribe later. And there are people who, don't have a huge amount of disposable income and they want to get started at a cheaper price. And we've done a whole bunch of research on subscription, and it's very clear that they're very, very valuable for a certain segment of customer. I mean, we just launched NI 360, which is our kind of 3-tier subscription about a year ago. It's going really well. And we've got customers coming into NI 360 that wouldn't be buying Complete. By the same token, a bunch of people have the money and want the ownership that perpetual licenses offer. And that's also totally cool. And I've been clear about this on our blog. I've been clear about it on Reddit and on Facebook and everywhere I interact with our community. Like, subscriptions are great for some people. For other people, that's not the way they want to buy our products. And we're going to offer people, we have no plans to stop offering our products via perpetual model. And we'll continue to offer people the ability to access our products through subscription. Choice. And the market is telling us that's a good idea.
Simon, if I can add, on the top of what you're saying, a comment, and I mean also like a recommendation to look to watch the previous episode with Francois, which I mentioned again before, because we talked about subscription, and he said something really, really interesting that actually also changed my mind a little bit about subscription. I say, like a typical musician, I mean, like a semi-musician, like an amateur musician. I'm not sure I can call this music, but what I'm trying to say is, I always said, no, hate subscription, hate all companies that have subscription. But then he says, I'm an entrepreneur. I had a startup. So I say, I know exactly what it means when you're just running. I mean, you have always like a shortage of resources. And if you want to actually build something stable and actually deliver new features, etc., I mean, looking from that person, having like a recurring revenue, so you can actually dedicate the team to a specific product. Yeah.
Let's be super clear that the kind of perpetual business model creates its own challenges. I'm not trying to say one's better than the other, but like they are fundamentally the way back to product management, right? The way a product team works and the way a development team works is much more driven by the constraints and the rules of their business model than anything else, right? Like in the perpetual world, we're on Contact 8, we're on Complete 15, we're on Tractor 4, we're on Ozone 11, we're on RX 11, we're on Neutron 5, we're on Nectar 4, we're on Trash 3. Like the way the business model works is you buy a perpetual license, and at that point you've bought software at a point in time. Now, every time we add features to that software and give it away for free, like how are we like that? That's we're not getting paid for the work necessarily. Now, don't get me wrong, we still do it all the time, because adding features to an existing product will help some people who haven't yet bought it decide to buy it, right? So there's that element to it too. But it does result in this world where you want big release moments, which are kind of 18 months away or 12 months away or 24 months apart. And the business model forces you to say, well, how does this new version that's coming out in 12 months, if people are going to upgrade to it, it needs to be loads better, right? It needs to be loads better. So let's design all these new features and not release them. We're going to store them up. We're going to keep them until the next moment where we can package them together in a version N+1, right? Mm-hmm. And in many ways, that's bad, because those features would be a great thing to ship to the customer straight away. In a pure subscription model, it's the exact opposite, right? The incentive is to deliver new value regularly and frequently, so that people feel that they're getting, value for money. Doing both at the same time, actually, it turns out is quite difficult, which is the game we've chosen to play for all of the right reasons. That's what our customers are telling us they want. But yeah, like the subscription model or the recurring revenue model does unlock certain things that the perpetual model suppresses.
Actually, the other question was actually about the same. So maybe, Laszlo, I hope you don't mind. Actually, we'll just go to the next one, which is just pretty similar. Maybe if we manage, we can still come back to it, but it's also like about a version to the subscription model. Oh yeah, we have another one. Do you think aspiring producers should learn traditional mixing and mastering techniques, or will that go the way of cutting physical tape in studio?
I think the necessity to learn them is going to become less urgent or less needed, because more people will rely on some of the tools to do it for them. But I don't think that means you shouldn't learn these techniques. Like, I think the mastery of something is about going deep, right? It's about understanding the details and the craft and the history. And so I wouldn't say people shouldn't learn the traditional techniques, but I think the need for everyone to learn the traditional techniques will weaken as the tools get more assistive and more useful, and in some cases can do a great job without knowing the fundamentals. But similarly, just because you have an arpeggiator doesn't mean you shouldn't know music theory, or doesn't mean you can't learn music theory. And again, going back to the conversation we were having earlier, I think some of these tools like Ozone, the assistant helps you understand the traditional way of doing things. It helps you understand that chaining devices, plugins, effects units, or whatever the analogy is, in an order has an impact on the sound. Like it helps you understand some of these things. So yeah, I'm saying the same answer, the same thing. Like, I don't think
Simon, if I can once again add something on the top of what you're saying, I think it's also like about sort of the outcome, right? So there are people who they're actually famous because they have such a particular sound, or they can actually create things that nobody can. Right. It can be thousands of producers, but if they just all sound the same, at what point you can actually use some automation? If there are people, I don't know, Eric Rubin, etc., famous of actually, being able to produce something which is actually nobody else can do. That's, and I think, it's like a craftsmanship. There are still people who do manual stuff. There are still music school when you just, that's it.
Totally. Like, look, there's a famous comedian in the UK called Les Dawson, and his whole shtick was he would play the piano incredibly badly, right? He would it was funny because he was so bad. And you would look at him and go, oh, he's a terrible pianist. No, he was an incredible pianist. And because he knew how to play the piano well, he knew how to break music theory for comedic effect, right? And back to your point, having mastery of the craft, it allows you to see creative opportunities that other people wouldn't have necessarily seen. So yeah, I would encourage people to learn the traditional ways of doing things, and I'd encourage people to learn music theory, and I'd encourage people to get into the details of the craft, because I think that's
whatever works for us, right?
Whatever works.
I know this is like a short question, so probably the answer is just yes, because you mentioned jobs to be done. Yes, so this is actually jobs to be JTB. Yeah, jobs to be done, right? What is the jobs to be done? behind the product, right? So behind the Ozone product. Yeah. By the way, if I can just say something, if we don't manage to get all the questions, here is the link. You see, guys, as I display on the this Facebook group that we are. Feel free to join. It's closed, but we approve. All the tech nerds. The only question is there: are you already like a crazy nerd? If yes, you will be admitted, of course. and we are there. Simon is there. Hopefully between some meetings, he may be able to answer those questions that we still have, or we'll just send it to him. But if can we take one more, Simon, or you are just complete like a
no. I've been told that they're covering for me in that other meeting now, so I've got a little bit of extra time.
Extra. Do you think that was the other one? Yeah, that's another long one. Okay, let me just change. Yeah, like this, so we can. Music is about bringing people together. So if recording a string quartet for your project seems like expensive and you get only one sound, oh Jesus, it's a long one. Or maybe I'll just. Don't you think it's this part is a bit lost in the model where all sounds or productions is done in a lonely bedroom studio environment with the tools that replace human performance? What your thoughts about it? So actually,
yeah.
Yes.
That's a. How to think about this? Like, I think the flip around is if music was only possible by people physically being together, then we'd have a lot less interesting and creative music. So, like, I think all of it is good, right? Like, we have a lot of music today that would only be produced if it was, someone in a dark room with their laptop. Like, some of my favorite songs are, there's a couple of tracks by DJ Seinfeld that I love. It's clear he just produced them on his own in a room. It wasn't about human connection. In fact, if there were humans there, he might not have produced the music he did. So, like, I think there's times for all of it, right? And there is something wonderful and joyous about playing with people. Again, I'm a drummer. Being a drummer on your own is really difficult. So, like, most of my musical career has been playing with other people, and there's something incredible about it. Again, like, often what you see is people coming up with ideas on their own in their bedroom on their laptop, and then taking them to their friends or their studio and playing them together, right? Like, a lot of film scores are composed, by one person in a room with contact and a keyboard, and then they print that out on a score, go into a studio and play it with an orchestra. So all of these things are good. Like, so I wouldn't want to say that one way of doing it is better than another. I think creativity is good, and anything that enables more people to be more creative is something to be celebrated.
Yes, I think we're just touching also like a business models, etc. Like you mentioned before. I mean, I think there was actually, I'm not sure what, like a documentary about I think it's the score about, like a film, like a scoring movies, right? And somebody mentioned there is rarely somebody who can afford, only maybe Hollywood productions that can afford actually full orchestra and, Abbey Roads, recordings. So this is, I think, something which is, that orchestra, this is, but I think even before nobody could afford it, right? So it's not that something dramatically, changed. It's actually some things were just, even in the, say, 18th, 17th century, it's not like everybody could go and actually, like, write the music and go to the, let's say, Vienna Orchestra, right, and play it. It's not, yeah. Okay. Max, are there any other technologies? Berlin. Hi, Berlin. Are there any other technologies on your peripheral that you have that have excited you?
Technologies on the peripheral. I guess that means like not directly connected to kind of the day job, I guess. That's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, like, the obvious one is AI, like, only because it's hard to see anything that doesn't touch and improve or change or challenge or disrupt in some way. And like, we are just so at the very, 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 very early stages of what's possible. Like, I spent the last 5 years of my career at Meta using AI to tackle online harm. and like detect bad content and bad actors and bad behaviors. And the progress we were able to make by applying this technology to that problem was just, I mean, it's the most impactful work I'll ever do in my career, probably. And just to see what becomes possible when technology is capable of things that it wasn't capable of just a few years before is like, it gets me excited. As an optimist and as a technologist, I like thinking about the ways that new technology can improve things. I also spent 5 years at Meta thinking about the ways that new technology can create negative consequences and trying to figure out how to mitigate the downsides of those negative consequences. And I guess in the Gestalt, I find both of those things kind of interesting, right? Like, how do you maximize the net positive of a new technology? No technology is universally good or universally bad. Technology is relatively neutral, and it's how we choose to use it as a group of humans, as a species, that will determine, its net positivity or its net negativity. And that idea exists throughout history, right? Every new technology that comes along has these kind of upsides and downsides. And I think we're in a really interesting period in humanity at the moment, without sounding too hyperbolistic about it. Like 15 years ago, you couldn't pull a device out of your pocket, and today you can pull a device out of your pocket and you can speak to anyone, anywhere, instantly, for free, in HD. And that is different. That's like an evolution to the human species that, like it's like an evolutionary jump in the human species. And again, it sounds hyperbolistic, but it's really not, right? In 2019, we crossed this barrier where more than 50% of humanity have access to the internet for the first time, right? Have access to the internet. And like, in many ways, I'm still excited about the remaining half of humanity, it's more than half now, so less than half now, of humanity that are about to get access to the internet for the first time. That's bonkers, right? Like, me and you are sitting here in our studios with HD webcams and cameras and, teleprompters and all this stuff. And there are people in the world that have, have never used Wikipedia, or they've never been on the internet. And so I guess I'm still excited for that. And I guess, if you're looking for any one thing, which I think is exciting in its most arbitrary form, in its most general form, the AI thing is, it's going to change many things.
All right. Thank you, guys. One super big thing. We published everywhere on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, on all these platforms, a survey. We're running those webinars for a little while. We actually, the reason I'm still pushing, and inviting super guests like Simon is actually I get so much great encouraging feedback, which, by the way, I thank you for. So it's really like 4 questions, and we just really want to understand what you would like to hear, later, and are there any things you would like to improve? Like, for example, make them longer and actually ask guests, to push their meetings further. So please, if you could spend like 3 minutes afterwards, we'll of course chase you a little bit, like remind you a little bit, but it's really like a valuable feedback for us. Okay, so thank you for that. Simon, any final words? Anything?
Thank you. Well, thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it. Like, I guess, and I hope some of the folks watching here found this useful and interesting. I like to do stuff like this because if people get one little nugget out of this that can help them change the trajectory of their career or their team or their company, then it's been worth every second, right? And the reason I enjoy doing this stuff is because these kind of things and speaking to other people who told their stories of their mistakes helped me grow in my career, right? Like, it helped me get into product management and get better at it and make fewer mistakes and hopefully more successes. Mm-hmm. And if I hope the folks here got some more out of this than just half an hour of their time watching me ramble on about music tech. So yeah, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Both you, Wojtek, and anyone who joined today.
Thank you, Simon. First of all, thank you to you. But I also, want to take this occasion and say thank you. If there is anybody from NI watching, thank you guys for great products and great work that you do, and together with Simon, really appreciate it. I want to once again give a small shout out also to our partner, the startup Componental from Denmark, guys. Big up for those guys because they're just on the Kickstarter working overnight, actually trying to launch their product, and me with them. So help them out. What else can I say? It was really big pleasure. Once again, I think one big like a learning for me is that those episodes have to be longer, and we have to actually already say this is not an hour because put so much into
Maybe just get started, man. Maybe just get started. Yeah.
Listen, one last word. I just wanted to say something. It also may sound some kind of like a big word, but I mean, this is the same episode. The excellent episode that actually, optimists like you, means Francois earlier. There's such a I'm learning so much from it, and actually there is so much optimism that I'm actually being sometimes a bit sort of how to say. I'm just a little bit afraid of those technologies sometimes. I just also sort of have certain doubts, what they can get us. Of course, there are some side effects, let's say what Maciek mentioned one of those questions. So having this optimism and actually seeing that everything actually always work up for the best, even if there are some, ups and downs, is great. And, it keeps me I know it sounds like, wow, big words, but I mean, I really feel like this, and so thank you, Simon, for that. This is actually the other reason I have to keep doing those webinars, right? For a mental health. All right.
It's all going to be okay, Wojtek. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah. I hope. No. I know it will. So thank you so much. For sharing, and guys, once again, thank you for listening. See you in the next episode.